Welcome back to Under Oath. Ted Bundy, with a lot of other serial killers, they will outlive all of us and their stories. And, it seems like a horrific thing to think that you can do these terrible acts and you'll be remembered through history and you'll have this infamous reputation. With all the crime stuff out there now, what does it bring to mind to you? Does it offend you? Is it something you're going, it's just life. We have to deal with it.
I wrote in my book that part of the mystique about Bundy is they glorify him, but actually he was not intelligent. He didn't have much of a personality. He didn't lure his victims into he beat them in their bed. So he was actually afraid of confrontation. And it doesn't bother me now. It's just a matter of setting the record straight. And in my book, I do a lot of that. I tell the opposite of what the media has portrayed him as.
Being somebody who has done a lot of this and been around a lot, I just wonder, as you're touring, and people are talking to you, do you ever get the sense that these people are more interested in, I don't know, glorifying somebody like this?
I think they're interested in what I say, which is he's not a person of interest. He doesn't deserve our thoughts. But the media has brought him up so much and made him the celebrity that he's turned out to be. I don't see it. When people talk to me, they want to hear my story. They don't usually bring up Bundy at all, but they just want to hear what I have to say.
As a survivor, as somebody who lived through this terrible ordeal, me serving time in the military, sometimes I wake up and I still believe I'm there. I can't imagine what it's like and what it takes to survive an encounter like this.
I don't think about them. I don't give them that much my time anymore. I went through recovery after the attack, and it's more like I don't have nightmares. I don't feel like he's going to come back because I've done things to heal myself, and each time I talk about him, I'm healing myself.
When you have to deal with something like this, for example, it goes all the way to trial, you have to testify, then you have to wait for the death penalty to take place. As an attorney, I've had my own issues dealing with the death penalty, but I've never had to deal with it from your side. Is the death penalty closure, or is it, do we find that on our own?
It was closure for me, but it brought out emotions because it didn't close any of the women's thoughts and process. Each one of the women, he says he killed over 60, but we named 30 in the book and give them a thought and a life, which they had. And Bundy took them away from us so soon that I think about his story that he killed so many women. And it doesn't bother me. I did do the deposition and he was there. I did do the grand jury and he was there. And then during the trial, again, I sat in the room and he was at the defense table. So he didn't scare me. I didn't feel like he was going to come across the table and attack me. I felt sorry for him. I felt like I had done my part in getting better and healing myself. And it was just his thing now he had to go through, which was the death penalty. I really didn't have that much of a say-so about death penalty during the time I was a sophomore in college, and I was thinking more about frat parties than going and having him killed. But it did take a long time. It took over 10 years for him to be executed.
Now, every once in a while, once somebody's caught, I noticed that people seem smaller. They don't seem that you look at somebody and you can't see the villain that they obviously are. They're cleaned up. They're in suits. They're in ties. When you're staring at this person, does it even feel like it's the same person, or does it just come off different?
It comes off different. When I look at him and I looked into his eyes, there was just nothing there. It was like in the beginning when I saw the deposition and the grand jury, he was cocky. He was kind of like, yeah, this is wasting my time. I want to get over this. And then again through the trial, He was cocky this time. He had his hand in his chin and he was just like looking straight at me, and I looked straight at him.
I tell people that most criminals, 95% of them, just make bad decisions. And then there are that 5% that either it's, I said, I haven't seen evil very often, but I've seen it enough to recognize it. And I can't quite describe it to a person. I like to say it feels like a lack of empathy. What would be your take on that?
Definitely he had a lack of empathy. He was trying to be a good guy during the day and was going to school, although he dropped out. But I think in his case that he was born this way, that there was something in him that grew to the evil that he became.
Power, control. My producer was actually talking to me before this, and she goes, "Do you think this could happen now?" And I said, "It's not the police who've gotten better. I think because of the internet and social media, it would have been harder for somebody like this to get away with something like that."
I think it can still happen. There's enough evil out there that can slide under the radar and do this to people, to women. And I just think he was nasty. He did beat women, he mutilated them, and he knew what he was doing.
Now, you've recently written a book called "A Light in the Dark," and I can't even imagine, writing a true story. I write a lot of fiction. I've written comic books, but anytime I have to write something that actually comes from the heart, it just causes me a lot of pain. I can't even imagine what it was like for you.
It was a roller coaster of pain and emotions and of love. It was something. It took us 2.5 years to write. My co-author, Emily LeBeau Lucchese, was very instrumental. I would have my thoughts and I'd talk to her for hours, and she would write down my thoughts and put them on paper very eloquently, so that she took part of the pain away, because we were just talking about it and letting me speak and take it out of my system. Anytime I talk about it or thought about it, it helps to heal me.
Now, I get the opportunity to talk to actors, celebrities, musicians, everybody. Um, a situation like this, you know, I use the word infamous because it's not something we earn. It's something that happens to us, and people look at us, and that's all they see. And I wonder, how do you deal with that when you're talking to somebody and they only look at you as somebody who survived this ordeal, not a person who has their own dreams and feelings and goals?
I It's interesting what you said about him being infamous. I think it goes back to the trial, and the cameras were in the trial, and it showed him as a good-looking guy, although he wasn't. But they showed him like that, and when I hear it and feel like talking about it, like I said, it heals me. And I just know the pitiful guy that he was, that snuck in people's rooms and killed the women in their beds.
Now, I was just in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee, about a week ago. I had a trial there. It was civil trial, and they have what they call Alcatraz East, and it's a crime museum. And one of the and I was walking through there, and the woman I was with is, she loves the crime stuff and she loves this. Me, I don't feel the same way because it's I lived it. I'm not amused by it. I don't get excited by it. But one of their advertisements is, Ted Bundy's car, his VW. And they have that, and it's an area, and everyone's taking pictures of the car and doing these things. And it just seems so uh, better macabre. I mean, I don't even know how to put it, but it just seems so, that this is something we pay to see.
It's sickening to me that women were actually killed in that VW, and then they are glorifying it. And I spoke with Alcatraz East, and they actually asked me to be part of the museum because we show the evil part of it, and they want to show the survivor side of it. so I'm familiar with that podcast and museum. But he doesn't get the glory. People want to pay to see him. They want to see the gore. They want to hear about the gore. They want to know what he did and where he did it.
Now, there's a difference between your book and the way people run these shows, and they, you know, like I said, they do glorify him sometimes. And I think there's a huge difference between the two to tell a story of surviving and just go, make a weird Bonnie and Clyde, feeling about this guy. And I wonder, is there some line that we can draw and go, no, this is not what we should be doing?
Every day I think that you see him on TV, on movies and books, and I try to read everything I can find about him. I've watched all the movies because it upsets me that they glorify him, but it always also interested to see how many of the victims he actually talks about or stories about them. And they're not mentioned. They're not mentioned very much at all. That's why in the book I talk about at least 30 of his 60 victims, and I give them a life, things they wanted to do, goals they wanted to do, what they wanted to do for dinner. And I try to bring a life to everybody because he doesn't get all the glory. He shouldn't get any positive feedback at all. He was a deviant behaviored masochist. He was a raper, and people tend to forget that part of him.
Now, again, I was talking about this before we started, and everyone was asking me what questions I was going to ask. And normally I do it based on the person I'm talking to and the feeling I get.
Uh-huh.
And I guess one of the things is I think about young women now and how they might not be as street smart or smart enough to be able to recognize evil or put them in a situation with somebody they don't know. I mean, how do you even give advice to somebody who's in their 18, 19, 20 years old, who goes to parties and they meet somebody they don't know? How do they even protect themselves?
There is the internet that should teach people how to recognize it, although it's not always adequate enough. But if they feel bad, if they feel a sense of uneasiness, they should get themselves out of the situation. A lot of times I do see women walking down the street on their phones. They don't know about their surroundings. They don't know who's behind them. And I think being aware of things and just going with your gut feeling is what they need to do. Whenever I walk, I don't use my cell phone. If something bothers me from behind, if I feel uncomfortable, I just turn around and watch the person walk by me. I don't want to feel, uncomfortable enough that, I just don't know what's happening. So I just turn around and I watch them walk by, and it makes me feel empowered.
Now, you've had the opportunity to scan your book, go over it, read certain passages. I always, when I write something or I'm part of something, I always want to know if I can hear my voice in it. When you go through your book, are you going, yeah, that's my voice. I know who I am.
Yes, definitely. I think it's in a positive mode. I'm a serial survivor. I've survived childhood lupus, being attacked by a serial killer, Bundy, and also I have breast cancer. So to me, getting through those things is actually what everyone should do. Everyone should have a way to cope with it. And everyone is strong enough, they just might not know it, that they need to look forward, not backwards, and find a goal they want to reach. And it may take baby steps to get there, but they can do it. They can go forward and reach their dreams.
Now, this is a ungodly stupid question. And I know even before I say it, I've had the opportunity to survive some terrible moments and some terrible things. And I always try to take something from it. And I don't even want to ask, what do you take from something like this? I mean, there's God, there's life, there's things like that. I mean, do you look at it and go, I can use this. I can make a difference in other people's lives because of this horror that happened to myself.
I think I can help other people by telling my story and letting people know that they're not a victim anymore. They're a survivor, and they have to draw the strength deep inside of them. But I also think that personally, I went through my stripes and what I still go through. and it's making me stronger. I don't look back and say, poor me. I look forward and say, let's go do something.
Now, taking that to the next level when it comes to trust, some people never get that trust back. They never feel comfortable. They never are able to get past who they can't go back. As an attorney, my job is to try to put people back to where they were before something happened. Is that even a possibility?
I found that right after I had my mouth wired shut for 9 weeks when it was broken after the attack, I had a hole in my cheek. I had a smashed chin, and my teeth were wired shut. But as soon as they became, I could open them, I found that I was afraid of men. And I didn't know if I didn't know who they were, I kind of got antsy about it. I wasn't comfortable. So I figured if I go to work at a lumber yard, I could find as many men as I could see in a short amount of time. And after about 3 weeks, it's like, I'm over this. And all I learned was there's some cute construction guys out there. But it was healing to me. Again, going through the process and getting through it myself and looking forward to what's next.
Now, this has been decades ago.
Yes.
And like I said before, the way people feel about these things, the way people are still, he probably is as big now as he was back then. Um, I mean, how disappointing is that for you?
It's disappointing because, again, thinking of the victims, it's disappointing that they didn't have all this time to live, and he did. And it hurts inside because I know they all had dreams. Like I said, they all wanted to do things, and it's just not fair that he lived so long before he was executed.
We have about a minute left. I'd like you to be able to tell me anything you can do, whether it be websites where we can get the book, because I think it's important for people to read this story and understand this is what it's about. It's not about VWs and things like that.
I tell my story in detail. I tell about what he did to the women, and I feel that my book is open book. I talk about anything and everything, and I answer any questions that are asked to me. The book, A Light in the Dark, Surviving More Than Ted Bundy, like I said, going through turmoils and strife in my life, I learned that I was stronger. And it's not about him anymore. It should be about the women that he killed, about me, about my roommate, and about the two girls in the sorority house that he killed. It shouldn't be about him. It should be about us.
Well, Kathy, I can't thank you enough for sharing this. And, hopefully our listeners will appreciate what you went through and understand that we shouldn't be glorifying this.
I agree. And thank you very much for talking with me.